A few weeks back, I sent a group of men out to a nearby town to look for food. Only a few came back. They said that the others had been slaughtered by a crazy man. And get this, he's a crazy man traveling with a little girl. You see, everything happens for a reason.
The best stories are the ones that are told through the most interesting characters, and there is no shortage of those in The Last of Us. Every character you meet in Naughty Dog's seminal masterpiece, from the excellently portrayed leading pair of Joel and Ellie to the equally deftly written and developed secondary characters they meet throughout the game. Every one of them is handled so expertly they all leave a mark on you in some form or another. In the lead up to The Last of Us Part 2's launch, we'll be talking about some of these characters and recounting their entire stories from the first game. Here, we'll be taking a look at David, the cannibalistic antagonist of the game's winter chapter. Though it's highly unlikely we'll see him again in the upcoming sequel, he surely made his presence known in the first game, through actions that stick out in our memory to this day. So without further ado, let's dive right in. David is a character who lives and dies during the game's winter chapter. There's no information at all on his past, on what he was or what he did before the cordyceps outbreak, or in all the years since then. He only ever appears on screen in the winter section of The Last of Us, and yet seeds for his arrival are planted in the previous chapter. After being set on the trail of fireflies by Tommy, Joel and Ellie find themselves at the University of Eastern Colorado. Though the university is abandoned, the fireflies having moved to Salt Lake City, they find that they're not alone, and are ambushed and attacked by a group of bandits. Joel and Ellie manage to escape with their lives, but just barely so. Joel is injured heavily in a scuffle with a bandit that results in a particularly nasty tumble, and as he and Ellie are riding away from the university after making their escape, she has to watch as he slips into unconsciousness and falls off his horse. Injured and weak as he is, Joel is in no condition to move around that much, and without any proper medicine to give him, Ellie finds herself unable to do much to help improve his condition. All she can do is hunker down, and so she watches over Joel, who slips in and out of consciousness right up until winter. It's at this moment of uncertainty and vulnerability for Ellie, when she's not sure if Joel will ever wake up, and cannot rely on his guiding hand for advice on what to do next. It is at this juncture in the story that Ellie has her run-in with David. While she's out hunting, Ellie runs into a pair of men in the woods, David and James. Ellie is immediately wary and suspicious of them, taking their weapons while she keeps hers aimed at them. David tells Ellie he's willing to trade for meat from the deer she's hunted in exchange for anything she might need. As it happens, she needs medicine for Joel, so she tells David that she'll trade for antibiotics. David agrees, sending James back to their camp to get the medicines. While they're waiting for James, Ellie and David are attacked by a pack of infected, runners and clickers both. The two of them work and fight together to stave off a vicious attack from the pack, somehow coming out of the attack alive. And while they take a breather and continue to wait for James, it finally comes to light how much trouble Ellie is in. David reveals to her that he's the leader of the very group that had attacked Joel and Ellie at the University of Eastern Colorado, and that they'd been tracking the crazy man who'd killed a lot of their group and the little girl he was traveling with ever since. As the realization dawns upon Ellie, James arrives back on the scene, having overheard their conversation and holding her at gunpoint. David, however, has other plans. He tells James to hand the antibiotics he brought with him over to Ellie, and then to let her go. Reluctantly, James agrees. Ellie, who doesn't need to be told twice she's being allowed to leave, grabs the medicine and immediately bolts. But of course, things aren't that simple. David, as you may have guessed, only lets Ellie go so he can send his people on her trail, which would lead them right back to her and to Joel. Ellie makes it back to Joel and gives him some antibiotics, but not long afterwards, she realizes that David's people have tracked her back here. She decides to go outside and lead them away from Joel, and then give them the slip and make it back. Though she slips and slinks her way through a group of David's bandits for a while, she doesn't get very very far. She's soon caught and grabbed by David, who chokes her unconscious. When Ellie wakes up, she finds herself in a cage, and she discovers the full extent of the barbarity of David's group of survivors. She sees James chopping up a human corpse on a table outside her cage, and she realizes that these people are a group of cannibals. She makes no attempt to hide her disgust at this in a conversation that follows with David. David tries to reason with her and offers her a place in his group. Ellie, unsurprisingly, responds by breaking David's finger. In his frustration, David gets a few good hits of his own in, and in his mind, Ellie's fate is sealed. Now she has to die. The next morning, David and James grab Ellie and attempt to slaughter her for meat, but in the struggle, Ellie bites David's hand. Before he can retaliate, she tells him that she's infected, and now so is he, showing him the old wound on her arm where she'd been bitten. James starts panicking, and David tells him she's bluffing, that she would have turned by now. But this confusion is exactly the window Ellie was looking for. She grabs her chance and a butcher's knife, slashes James across the throat, killing him, and hightails it out of there. She flees through the town, David giving chase, until finally the two of them find themselves inside a restaurant. In the ensuing struggle between the two, a lantern drops to the floor, triggering a fire that slowly envelops the building. While David reels from the flames, Ellie manages to hide. David, though, locks the restaurant's door, trapping Ellie inside with him. What follows is a game of cat and mouse as David stalks around the burning building looking for Ellie, and Ellie sneaks up on him to attack him again and again. This culminates in another desperate struggle between the two. David once again winds up with his hands wrapped around Ellie's throat, choking her out once again. As she struggles against him, Ellie manages to grab David's machete and violently hacks away at him. She continues hacking at David repeatedly in a fit of fury, beyond the point of killing him, and is only stopped when Joel, who had woken up thanks to the medicine and had tracked her down himself, finds her and pulls her away. This is the last we see of David in The Last of Us, but he leaves a lasting impact on Ellie and proves vital for her story arc. Her traumatizing run-in with him makes her a bit distant and more quiet, but at the same time, it also strengthens her resolve in her and Joel's ultimate goal. It's very unlikely that David will return in The Last of Us Part 2, given how irrevocably dead he is. But considering how this is a story that looks like it'll be focusing on Ellie's darker and more violent side, her encounter with David will probably hold a lot of significance. It was this juncture in her life that truly saw her descending into that sort of darkness for the first time. It should be interesting to see how that continues to influence her character. And that about does it for this video. If you enjoyed what you watched and want to see more from GamingBolt, please hit the subscribe button. Also, don't forget to switch on the notifications bell icon next to it. That way you'll never miss any of our videos. Thanks for watching.